Ah yes, the small sword. Delicate fencing needle, aristocratic accoutrement, not good for much except prancing about and having petty duels against other small swords. Right? Well, there are certain things you can say about its limitations. How it doesn't cut very well or at all, how it lacks the mass to parry heavier blades, how it doesn't have the reach of a rapier, how it's no good against armor. But everyone knows that what you do against armor is you order your servants to shoot it with guns. And recently, or recent-ish at least, Matt Easton made a video about it, comparing it to other swords and pointing out particularly the limitations against a saber, where he wouldn't want to have to fight a saber with a small sword. But I found a HEMA sparring video showing small sword versus saber, and the small sword did way better than I was expecting. Let's take a look. This video is by False Edge HEMA, linked in the description, of course, as always. By the way, I'll keep it muted because there's music in it, but you should watch the original video anyway. First off, kudos to these guys for fencing in the rain. Kinda sucks. So, small sword on the left, as you can see, immediately lands a hit, just with a quick lunge. And that's, of course, the strength of the small sword. Speed. Nice clean footwork, too. As you can see, the small sword fencer advancing and then just quickly popping a lunge. Nice. Saber got a hit there. Oh, there's a feint. And then it comes around. Oh, although the small sword hits too. And the small sword, in fact, hits first. Which it's not much of a consolation in a real duel, because that cut would still follow through. That small sword thrust has very little stopping power. It may be highly lethal, but it would take a bit and it wouldn't be immediately incapacitating. The saber cut was only against the upper arm, but it's of course not fun times either way. All right, we're cranking up the speed. Very nice. There's a false edge hand snipe attempt, as you can see here, and the small sword fencer just retracts the hand. And then we've got a Molinet as a feint, basically, and to start the cut, which the small sword fencer catches. And this is the difficult part. With a small sword, you have to defend very low on the blade, otherwise it'll just blow straight through. So that worked out, and then very nice here. After the cut, the saberist immediately raises up to a hanging guard to catch any follow-up attack, which, of course, that's more of a saber habit because the small sword is not going to really counter-cut, but it still makes sense as an ingrained saber response. And here again, this is a big cut, right? So it comes all the way around. So again, this needs to be parried nice and low. So if you mess it up, you'll get your hand hit. So it's quite well done. And then really nice counter lunge. So again, this response makes more sense for saber because you're expecting a counter cut. And I mean, it almost worked. Right? There was still a deflectional action to the side, but apparently the point still found the side, or maybe even the back. Oh, did that hit? I guess so. Nice. False edge cut to the hand or arm. I like that they're both fighting smart. The small sword fencer keeps threatening with a point, of course, but is very aware of the arm being exposed, being the furthest forward, and the saberist, of course, keeps hunting after the arm or hand because that's the safest way to land a hit without being exposed. So there's another attempt to deliver a false edge cut to the arm or hand. And I'm guessing it hit the small sword guard, so that was close. And thrust is deflected with a hanging point. And then cut comes around. Again, smart of a small sword fencer to step back a little bit. Not that it would have hit anyway, but it's definitely good to be safe. And there, counter thrust comes, right as the saber blade comes around. That's always the problem when you're using cuts against a thrust-centric blade, especially a fast blade. Every time your own blade is off-center or not threatening because it just comes around after a cut, that's always when you're vulnerable, and that's when you can receive a thrust easily. Also, I like that the small sword fencer doubled up there. So like, scored a hit and then just another lunge just to make sure. Very good. Fancy small sword shenanigans. And not just fancy, it serves a point. I mean, it serves to deliver the point, I guess. So all of that is misdirection. All these flourishes, and you can see the opponent responds to that and is trying to figure out, okay, where is it coming? Right? And that's exactly the point. You just try to misdirect, and then you deliver the actual attack. And this was perfectly timed too. Right as the saber comes up, in other words, doesn't protect at all, completely open, boom. That's when the thrust comes in. So basically, the opponent is doing the same thing now. Same misdirection. That's a case where fancy twirling actually works. But you have to do it in random patterns. Whereas Hollywood heroes and villains tend to do the predictable figure eight that you can time and interrupt. So this can be either a beat or it can force the opponent to withdraw the blade, because you know that the small sword can't resist this kind of beat. If it hits high enough up on the blade, that thing is going way off center, right? So you have to disengage to get out of it, which means there's a brief moment where it doesn't threaten. It's very brief because you can see the point is still forward, but the small sword fencer also has to still worry about the cut. So you can't really, when the saber is already about to come forward, you can't really thrust then, because then you're just going to take the cut. Even if your thrust lands, that's not a good trade. So here, another feint, boom, deflecting, and then this is perfectly done. This is exactly what you want with the saber. The ideal is that the chambering, if you will, of the cut to get into a high position from which you can cut downward. Ideally, that movement already deflects the opponent's blade and swipes it aside and clears it for that attack to come. It goes both ways. The arm is generally a safe target for the saber, but also for the small sword. Just quick thrust to the arm, there you go. There's a bind with the saber to suppress the small sword, and then from there, just a quick wrist power Moulinet. This is about as small as you can make the movement from there. So nice and quick, and it hits the arm. Even though the small sword fencer had the right response, just was a little too slow. There it is, successful false edge cut to the arm. A lunge to the leg, interesting. Yeah, just interrupted in the middle of this cut. And this is all about timing, of course. Just why timing is so important. This is a common feint to whip the blade forward with a turn of the wrist and then come around for a backhand cut, but the opponent wasn't taking the bait and was just thrusting to the arm. Exploded into a lunge to the head quickly enough that it couldn't be defended. All right, so the saber fencer manages to parry this thrust and immediately countercuts to the... Oh, wait. Hang on. Does it actually hit? No, it doesn't. Oh wait, maybe it wasn't a successful defense. It's a bit hard to see. Oh, okay, I think I see the blade flex. So that thrust to the head actually landed. It can be difficult to see. Sometimes things just go wrong, especially on a wet, slippery ground. So another attempt at a false edge deflection with the saber. Cut. That was just a little too far away, but the small sword still displaces to the outside. And oh, wow. I completely missed that. Well, that's really showing off the skill of the small sword fencer. Very nice. Check that out. That's fantastic. So, covering the line at the same time as delivering a thrust to the abdomen. I like this. I mean, I like all of it, but that was a particularly nice, skillful maneuver. Yeah, they're both doing the right thing, basically, but the small sword fencer has really impeccable defense and offense too. So yeah, that was really awesome to see. So this goes to show that there is no such thing as an unwinnable matchup. I mean, there might be, like, for example, a dagger against polearm, although under very specific circumstances that might work out in confined spaces and whatnot, or if the dagger fighter is extremely good at dodging and rushing in and grappling and all of that. There's always going to be skill as the main determinant. Like, yes, you can be at a disadvantage in a certain combination or a certain mixed weapon matchup, but that doesn't mean that you can't pull it off. So I would agree generally that the small sword here is mostly at a disadvantage against the saber, but this shows how it really doesn't have to be a problem. Like, you can absolutely work around it. You just have to be aware of the limitations, what you can and can't do, and choose the right tactics, and then you may very well take the win. So, hope you found this interesting. Again, check out their channel, link down below. And stay safe, folks. Don't get stabbed.